like, that before the engineering that went into what we appreciated as being the banana, that bananas had really large seeds. That, one of the things that, that they were kind of cross-pollinating there was creating a banana that, for whatever attributes, one of the attributes being that it's, rather seedless, right?
Well, I'm not sure about that, because I know that they are difficult, the seeds. And so I saw varieties that had, I'm thinking back in Brazil, they had some that were literally the whole plant looked like it was just super seedy. But I know that in El Salvador, that what they're doing is they're hiring workers to sieve banana seeds that are super tiny in the current banana.
Oh, wow.
In an effort to be able to breathe, plant the seeds rather than. So there's that kind of like the super microscopic seed that they're chasing after in El Salvador, to the, every kind of variety that they're looking at in Brazil, trying to find out which one of these is going to be resistant to the blight. And so that's why the seed bank is important, is that having access to this diverse range of every kind of banana instead of just the banana that we're eating. And, it's like corn here where 94% is identical, right?
Thanks, Monsanto.
Well, but, there's that odd thing that, this is all part of the Green Revolution where our population was growing and they started, the crossbreeding before they did genetically modified. Of course, crossbreeding has been a practice. Like corn, like teosinte, corn, the ancestor corn, which is in a couple of my pieces, it looks like a dog's toenail. It's this little hard pellet thing, and through crossbreeding in the Native American, the native peoples here in the Americas were able to crossbreed and create the corn we know today. And then they just took one that, can be used from, food and fuels and plastic and feed for cattle. And it's like it's this multi-purpose grain, So, just crazy. But yes, it's interesting because corn has there's this corn that has, it's like garlic where the husk is around each individual kernel. It's like crazy stuff that they've managed to preserve just in case something bad happens, like the ongoing disease threat.
Sure.
And Norway, and it has a law against GMO modified food being in the seed bank, but it's not clear to me, and that would be interesting to follow up on.
Sure.
I kind of think the cat's out of the bag in terms of GMO, right? Because it's like cross-pollinating with everything, which is back to a Monsanto story, right?
And so, Monsanto, like one of the big motivators for Monsanto is that they can genetically modify the corn so that you can indiscriminately spray the fields with Roundup.
Right, the Roundup Red.
Right, and so you can kill everything in the field other than the corn, and then that, which I don't want to put that in my body, but that's a whole different conversation.
What, Roundup? Right. Well, and what they're finding, like the impact on all those, the monarch population and the pollinators, and then the frogs with the extra limbs up in, in the Corn Belt, where they're, 5-legged frogs and.
Right. And so, but anyway, so where
we're very dark now.
The conversation could go very dark, right? So this show here at Holly Johnson is up until
November. Okay. It's up for 2 months because the front gallery will have a new person. That show will close, and so there'll be another solo show up there that opens, I think, October 6th.
Right.
So it'll be up.
Okay. And so, and again, the show here has images from the deluge. We have the hydrographs. Tell me about the work here with the coyotes.
Well, the coyote pictures, the reason we're showing the coyote pictures with these, have never been shown actually in the United States before. They were shown in England, but they were right before we had this record flood, we had the driest 11 months ever.
Right.
And so the drought was so severe. I don't know if you were here when that happened. It was 2011 to 2013 to 2015 was the drought.
Right.
And it was the most severe drought, recorded in ever, I think, in North Texas. So I'm saying that, and then of course I'm like, should I? I'm saying that thinking I've fact checked it, but
now, you know what? Well, everyone has access to Google. They can fact check you.
But it was a bad.
It was a very bad drought.
And so I became interested because the same piece of property that is kind of like my art lab that I go and watch that Deluge was made in is the same spot where these coyotes were photographed. So what I did is I set up multiple trail cams in this large area that's along a tributary to the Trinity River, and it goes into Lake Grapevine.
Right.
And I photographed for 2.5-3 years this set of coyotes living in this area, this Corps of Engineer land.
Right.
And so that's triggered. And so there are, multiple photographs of these very, very kind of creepy night photographs of the coyotes on the prowl because there's no food. So they're coming into the neighborhood. My dogs are, it kind of started from like, what are the dogs barking at? And then...
No, it wasn't... It was probably about 2 years ago. I was hearing a lot of coyotes in our area, and for those folks that don't live in areas where it's coyotes, it's not like what you think of in the movies in terms of like a wolf howl. It sounds like a wild pack of dogs, and because they're like whenever they start, they're never alone. It's like you hear this pack, and it's like. And you can always kind of figure out, okay, is that a couple of acres back, or is that like outside my window? And it's always, where are the kids, where are the small animals? But I haven't heard the coyotes in the last probably a year. I mean, they haven't been so maybe it has something to do with they're not having to come into the unnatural populated settings, because they're we have had enough rain lately that they can find food sources out where they want to be left alone at night. Yeah,
although they're the pressure is because it's developing in that part of Texas is developing so much. We have 100 people moving to Dallas every day.
Right.
So there's a huge boom going on, and so the space that they have to occupy that doesn't bring them in contact with humans is shrinking.
Right.
And there's a very interesting website that talks about urban coyotes and how adaptive they are.
I think I did see that where they'll plot on a map like coyote sightings and
and they can link together little green spaces and create a habitat for themselves just on they raise pups in abandoned buildings or in culverts, and then they can kind of patch together enough hunting area with green spaces plus people's cats and little frou-frou dogs. But
right, poor guys.
Yeah, I know.
Right. But so where do you think your work's headed? Is it do you have any other ideas that you can talk about at this time that you're thinking about, or?
Well, I have a couple projects that I'm working on right now. I'm working on a group of scientists on. I can't say too much about it because they haven't published their papers yet, and I haven't published my. So I'm doing a couple of projects. One is birds and air pollution.
Oh wow!
And then one is insects as disease vectors of things like Lyme disease and mosquito-borne illnesses. So I have that's came out of I I was invited to do an artist residency at the Carey Institute of Ecosystem Studies, which is up in upstate New York. And they're a private scientific research, super interesting place. And they are the people who, they're looking at ecosystems, right?
Right.
And they're the people who discovered acid rain and first publicized acid rain. So they're very important ecosystem studies kind of think tank and research center. So they invited me up, and I started working with a couple scientists there on insects and disease vectors, and then I'm working with another group that's on air pollution in birds.
Well, that sounds incredibly interesting. Can't wait to see those images. So we can expect something there in a couple of years?
I'm working. I mean,
it'll be done when it's done. Right?
Well, I tend to work. The work that's up at Holly's was a 3-year window,
right?
And so it takes the thinking and the research and the studio time.
Right.
Just takes. It takes a lot of time, and
Absolutely.
I do have a full-time job as a professor.
Right.
So making mental space and studio time is always a challenge.
Right.
Because I want to do a great job for the students.
So I imagine your summers are jam-packed with trying to be as productive on on the creative front as possible.
Well, I work year round, and since I teach creativity studies, there's all those studies that talk about that if you take a hiatus, the startup time is really can be huge. So I am a huge advocate for my students and for my grad students of working consistently and really setting aside time to make and think while you're, because there's never the perfect time. There's never that moment where you life stops and you can just focus on your artwork. I have kids, I have a job, I have family and friends so it has to be integrated into your life, or otherwise it becomes this other kind of, you never get to it.
Sure.
So I'm really a big advocate for working all the time.
Sure. And so do your students get the benefit of being around you as you work? Or do you bring it into the space, or do you make time during the day around teaching?
I make time in the day around teaching. I don't, it's an interesting thing. Right now I have an undergraduate research fellow who her name is Anna Lee, and she's actually she's the internship. She has an internship with Holly right now, but she'll be working this year with the scientific group I'm working with on air pollution in birds.
Okay.
And that's the first time that I've done something that involves a student directly in part of the research. She and I will not overlap in terms of the imagery, but it's a way of kind of seeing
a parallel directed study, sort of.
Well, and she'll be working there's 2 undergraduate research fellows. One is a science student and one is a visual arts student, who's Anna. So we're bringing them together to kind of foster that art-science dialogue and see how that might impact their learning and how that might go as a model for future ways to go about it.
Great.
But my students here, they spend 6 hours a week with me, and so they kind of know what I'm thinking about. Right. It's really hard to come out of the studio and not talk about what you're interested in about, even though I try to present the broadest range of practices possible for them to be exposed to, while they're undergraduate and graduate studies. But so I don't do it directly, except in this one case. So I'm curious to see how that's gonna where that will go.
Right. So if folks wanted to follow you, you have a website, and it's dornithdoherty.com. Can you pronounce your name? Because
Dornith
Doherty.
Oh well, any way you want to say that, Doherty.
Because I am, my Irish heritage is 6 generations back, so I've totally, I'm going to butcher anything that's, close to Gaelic. But, so dornithdoherty.com, and are you on Instagram, or?
I've posted 2 pictures on Instagram.
All right. Well,
I have like 500 followers, and like
you're only